1995 was a serendipitous year for Japanese RPGs, beginning what would be retroactively known as the golden era of JRPGs. A pantheon of developers were breaking the dam with a deluge of impressive titles still fondly spoken of for 3 decades now, many of which were sculpted in the image of Meguro Tokyo's own Square. And with the success of Final Fantasy VI and the following Chrono Trigger, Square had the money and ingenuity to internally launch an initiative for new talent. With modest budgets in the hand of young stars, this allowed members to create taste-breaking experimental titles. And the subject of this video is a product of this gracious move. Fresh off a well-impressive run as the graphics director of Final Fantasy VI, Tetsuya Takahashi had enlisted the prolific writing capabilities of his now wife Soraya Saga with an idea for its next incarnation. Together, they fed the idea of a story they had been germinating for years now and pitched to their seniors what would have been the script for Final Fantasy VII. This unfortunately came with mixed news. The bad of which was that this idea proposed was far too dark and complicated for a flagship series, but it was perfect for the darling endeavor of Square's initiative. So, helmed with the Chrono team, Saga and Takahashi begun a 3-year pilgrimage dubbed Project Noah, an epic about anthropology, psychology, religion, science, and ideology, all in a high fantasy sci-fi setting. And this trek would result in translation teams sleeping under their desks, religious elders pounding at their doors, all while an inescapable deadline loomed over their golden goose in an attempt to create, if not the greatest gaming story, then certainly one of the most ambitious in the medium's history. A saga about where we come from, what we are, and where we are going. This is a story of Square's 1998 classic, Xenogears. The game starts strongly. An unimaginably large arc of humanity powered by technology near indistinguishable from magic. The Eldritch is specifically a colony ship, sailing from an inviolable Earth, now known as Lost Jerusalem. Unbeknownst to the player, at some point, there was a calamity that coerced people to set to the skies, and this very ship has been used as a transport to further investigate this Omega-level threat. Unfortunately for everyone on board, that very same threat is just underneath their feet. And after a dizzying amount of sci-fi jargon and flashing diagrams on a screen, something hijacks the systems of the ship. Power starts plummeting, massive tendrils punch through the hull, and a fearful Captain Shigeyoshi watches the screens as a haunting message repeats endlessly.
You shall be as gods.
The crew does everything they can to mass evacuate the ship, and Shigeyoshi, forlorn, stares down at a pendant of his family before he makes the brave sacrifice of detonating the Ark. Then, the ship explodes in the void of space. No one survives, save for one lone figure. A fully nude woman arises from the wreckage. Emotionless, she watches the Eldritch collide with the Earth in a rain of knives from heaven. And from this begins humanity anew. Like I said, that's a pretty strong start. Before we're introduced to our protagonist in the sleepy village of Lahan, we are greeted with a monolithic text sprawl, and to surmise the contents for this video, I'll boil it down to its very core. The year is 9999, and our heroes are born between the conflict of 2 warring countries, Aveh and Kislev. And they've been at this for like 300 years now. And Kislev gains an upper hand when a shadowy organization excavates a gear from an ancient civilization known as Zeboim. So the war's not really going their way until they meet their malevolent benefactor, the floating nation of Solaris. So to put it super simply, Aveh and Kislev are in a full swing arms race right now, grabbing gears, uncovering relics, beating the shit out of each other, all while Solaris watches it from afar, leaving the denizens of the continent, in constant turmoil. But we're not done with the doom and gloom. Our protagonist, Fei Fong Wong, has a damning premonition, with himself in the cockpit of a gear, annihilating the countryside and the village of Lahan. This manifests in his newest painting. He's actually pretty gifted, by the way, so it comes out pretty good. It's a shame it's of his house engulfed in flames. In this same house, if the player speaks to Fei's caretakers, we learn a little bit of his origin. Beholden to the village elder in the freezing rain by a masked man. And Fei has no memory before this point, and it'll become evident why. Okay, look, it's not all bad, because tomorrow marks the marriage between Fei's best friend Alice and her fiancé Timothy. And admittedly, it's kind of bittersweet to see her off. The person to take that worse, really, is Alice's little brother Dan. God damn! Who kind of resents this fact. Training under him for years, he's looked up to Fei so much. Honestly, he kind of wishes he was his brother-in-law. And Alice actually seems to have some mixed feelings about that too. If only he showed up just a little bit sooner. Maybe they could have shared a life together. It's also in Lahan where we meet Satan Uzuki, who is either a Chad or a bastard, depending on who you ask. And, I'm of the former opinion. I'm a Satan stan, that's my boy, actually. He lives as the village's doctor atop the cliffside. And as the player, the first time you meet him is walking in on this precious artifact, which prompts a conversation. It seems to be a music box from the Zeboim civilization. Fei claims he feels something within him as he listens to this music, and Satan claims that, quote,
"That just may be because you have someone living inside of you, and he too must have liked this music a long time ago, before he became a part of you."
What the fuck?
And as Fei exits, pondering that statement, the following scene plays. Oh, that cannot be fucking good. On his way home from dinner, Fei notices a fleet of the mentioned Kislev gears assaulting Lahan, and Satan tags along as they double time it to the village. And when the two see the destruction, Fei's feeling funky. I could try explaining this, but I think it'd be better if I just show you. So, Fei hops in that gear, knowing nothing about piloting one. And all while he really starts tearing into the opposition, but eventually they do start to overwhelm him. And while this happens, Satan seems pensive. If he awakens here, it's all over. And just as he's saying such, he happens upon Dan. But before he can escort him to Alice, Dan notices Fei in the gear. And in Satan's own words, he's, quote,
"Bound by the dark, cruel destiny of God."
And just then, Timothy rushes in to try and save Dan. And what happens next? Well, see for yourself. And that is the hook of Xenogears. Less than an hour in, and Lahan and all of those not lucky enough to have ran have been turned to glass, and that is directly the cause of Faye's outburst. Whether you blame the attackers or Faye, it hardly matters. His gear leveled Lahan, and with no shadow of a doubt, Faye has murdered the few people he's ever loved. And Dan is the first to say such, all because he used that monster. Satan suggests that Faye skip town to avoid attracting more undue attention. That's far better an option than a forced exile. Besides, nothing is ever going to be the same after this. It's not like he'd be able to stay anyways. So, Faye runs deep into Black Moon Forest, where he is quickly accosted at gunpoint by another central character. Ellyhayym van Houten, first-class citizen and lieutenant of the Gebler Guard of Solaris. Elly's nervous. She even mistakes him as a Kislev soldier at first. And she informs Faye she's been ordered to shoot any of the, quote, lambs she comes into contact with. But something is strange about this meeting. Faye doesn't fear the death Elly welcomes. In his own eyes, he's worthless. And that fucking bothers Elly. Big time. Anyways, she gets knocked out, and when Faye finally nurses her back to health, they have a moment to just chat, where Elly reveals her name to Faye, to which he states he somehow already knew that. They agree to wait until daybreak to go their separate ways, and Faye starts having the strangest nightmares ever. And once day comes, Faye begins to lament about the innocents he's murdered in Lahan. As he explains what happened, Elly's starting to get the big picture. And, well, so are we. Elly was leading those same gears when she landed in Lahan due to an injury to the back. And without blowing her cover, she calls Faye a coward for shifting the blame. If he'd never gotten that gear, he'd never killed all those innocent people. Gebler would have gotten what they came for and left. But she immediately feels fucking terrible for saying something like that, and that's great. I guess she's not the worst human being of all time. But seeing that Faye's refusing to leave with her, she's got really no choice but to walk alone. And it's on that trip alone where she has the most fucking chilling flashback, and we hear the origin of that same vitriol.
あなたは自分には何の責任もないって言い方してるじゃない。違う。私何もやってない。あなたがギアに乗って応戦なんてするから被害が広がったんじゃないの？私じゃないの。知らないの。あれは誰もが扱える機械じゃないのよ。やってない。どうしてその責任を自分で背負おうとしないの？そんな力なんてない。どうして他人になすりつけようとするの？そんな特別な能力なんてありません。あなたは卑怯だわ。
そうさ。俺は卑怯者なんだよ。
Already, this is a lot to digest at once. And we don't get our chance to do such, because Elly is about to get fucking eaten. But once both Faye and, yes, Satan come to her aid, he drops the gear down so Faye can smack the shit out of that dino. And that night, the crew get a moment of respite. And it's becoming clear that Satan knows his way around gears like a lot. And he casually mentions to Elly that he did see another gear on the outskirts of the village. And in Solarian, asks her if it was hers. So he's like, oh, having trouble sleeping. I know what you are. And Elly asks what we're all thinking, like, who are you? And the answer is that he is fucking him. He's him. Not only that, though, Citan saw to a proper burial for those men. But he mentions they probably would have hated dying on land dweller soil. Such a shame. He also asks Elly if she could politely leave, as to not draw Solaris' attention to Faye, because trust me, you really don't want it. He wishes to protect Faye from the forces that be, and with her around, it's not gonna happen. Besides, it's for Elly's safety too. But she wants to apologize to Faye. It's her fault Lahan got leveled, and they really shouldn't have even been there to begin with. Now, innocent blood is on her hands, which Citan respects the perspective deeply. He doesn't really expect empathy from Solaris' dogs, and their conversation gives a little bit more light to the relationship between Solaris and the land dwellers. They call themselves the Able, the shepherds, and the dwellers the lambs. In a fashion similar to enlightened despotism, they feel an obligation to lead those less intelligent. But most importantly, they, quote, possess the right to give life and death unto them as they see fit. But to actually be on the ground and see Faye, that propaganda faded. He was no different from them. In fact, he was more powerful. Also, it's important for me to say that despite the very clear Solarian ties that Citan has, he's very kind. He's soft with Elly. He sympathizes with her. He knows she's worried about the bloodshed that could follow. She's one in the same with Faye. They're just kids caught in the middle of war, but he'll be damned if he sees either perish. Already, it's brilliant character development for all three. It's fucking good, man. Okay, let's fast forward just a little bit. We see a little bit more Gebler tech given to Aveh, and then the duo escape to Dazil to get some parts for their gear. And I'm realizing now that we haven't really introduced the gear. This is Veltal. Fucking cool-ass name. Welcome to the party, Veltal. Quick little editor's note. In the bar of Dazil is actually the first time you can meet Big Joe, a fan favorite character who appears, honestly, everywhere. To paraphrase the wiki directly here, he punches out these two loud excavators for not letting him drink in peace and then goads them to do something better with their lives. But they just ultimately decide to run away, and Citan notes he likes to make his presence felt. And when you get to talk to Big Joe, he just sees the world in a very cynical light. Everyone's after money and weapons, and he's there to do whatever he pleases, and mysteriously says he could introduce himself today and be a different person tomorrow. This guy's fucking everywhere, and I'm not even lying when I say he might be the most interesting character in Xenogears. I just didn't know this is where you met him first. Let's keep a Big Joe tally, I guess. And while wandering through the desert, Faye catches a glimpse of just the most mind-melting shit. Just a fucking floating city with an aura around it, just floating through the desert. All the stuff he's seen in a day. This has to be like a caveman watching the lunar landing. The guy has been alive for 4 years in his mind. This is insane shit. Eventually, he does get into some fights with some raiders, and Citan shows up in Veltal to save him. Again. And, of course, Faye kicks their ass. But that celebration is halted by the most... if there's ever a fucker to aura farm, it's this guy.
Your hot-blooded desire for battle has not been tamed, I see.
This is Grahf, the Seeker of Power. And Faye is his fucking plaything. You cannot imagine how much of a fucking puppet Faye is to this guy. He fucks with Faye's mind and lets him know he's a goddamn monster. And with their powers combined, they can kill Mother God. That's an insane statement to make. He tells him shit like how he reminds him of his father, all kinds of stuff like that. Point is, he knows Faye way more than he himself does, and he needs to grow more powerful so Grahf can use him. So one fight with a big sandworm later, they're captured by the Aveh military. And in this carrier, he has yet another crazy dream, this time with his father and Grahf speaking about containing, this strawberry blonde, even if it kills him. I promise these dreams get a little less frequent. You're not going to keep getting bombarded. And while Faye's knocked out, Satan is seen speaking to this scary motherfucker in a swirling void adorned with Faye's paintings. The figure speaks of a religious awakening, finding the resting place of God and resurrecting him, hoping that this will help them escape the fate promised at their genesis. Incidentally, the military ship ends up getting fucking poached by the legendary land vessel, the Yggdrasil, piloted by Bartholomew Fatima, the would-be king of Aveh turned sky pirate. Under his command are his retainer Sigurd and the funky butler Old Man Maison. So as Yggdrasil barrels towards the craft, Faye and Satan have no choice but to fight for their lives to escape. And once Faye is able to get into Veltal and leave, Bart shows a display of power by hopping in his own gear to stop them. And irritatingly enough, Bart is under the impression that he's fighting Aveh soldiers, and he's not listening to very clear signs otherwise, typical Bart. And in the middle of that fight, the sand beneath them starts to give way. And oh fucking no! Two total bros with unimaginable power get stuck in an underground cave and have to work together to get out? Aw, shucks. My most important takeaway from the cave adventure, besides the bro bonding, was meeting Isaac Balthazar, who is, yes, a direct allusion to the three wise men who visited Jesus Christ. He's a dude who's just living in a little cottage under the earth, for whatever reason. And Isaac freaks the fuck out when he meets Faye because he recognizes his gear. Veltal, in his words, is, quote, host for the Slayer of God. He's also one of the first people to speak of the in-universe creation myth. In a twist on the Book of Genesis, humanity built gears to duke it out with God themselves when casted from Eden, and God eradicated everyone in the path, but not unscathed. Isaac recounts that, quote, God buried himself deep beneath the ocean to sleep for eons, and just before doing such, he created right-hearted humans to inhabit the planet. And you as the player wouldn't quite know this yet, but the resting place is a holy site known as Mahanon. And very few even know of its tangible existence, much less the whereabouts. And that's very, very intentional, and we will get to it. You remember how I talked about the Aveh-Kislev War just a little bit ago? And how those gears were excavated from a, biblical time? The excavators of Aveh don't know that. No records are public, and there's a reason why. It's all controlled by a very specific group in the guise of, quote, the greater good. That seems normal, right? You'd withhold that information from people? That they have, ancient weapons from, biblical time? And Isaac's something of a gearsmith himself, and his gear Calamity is actually in the same mine that they're in. And that's not a big problem. I mean, it's remote controlled. It's not gonna go apeshit, right? Of course not. And in one of my favorite vignettes in the game, the boys surface near Bledavik, Aveh's capital and Bart's home. And while the boys were having their fun, Sigurd and Satan seem to have something of a reunion? Sigurd refers to him as Hyuga, his birth name. And Satan wonders how the fuck Sigurd got himself in a position to be Bart's whipping boy. When the crew gets back together, Maison serves and spills the tea. Bart's gear piracy is his contribution to the Aveh-Kislev War, which is a pretty roundabout way of getting the throne back. You see, he lost it 12 years ago when his father was assassinated in a Gebler-led coup to put his previous minister, Shakan, in power. So they did what they could to hide Bart away and claim his death to the world and raise him as a sand pirate. And look, they'd really love to get Bart's ass back on the seat, but their resistance to the occupation has been, halted. And this is due to Gebler's kidnapping of Lady Marguerite, Bart's first cousin and deranged wife. Classic royalty. And Margie has a very important role as the current Holy Mother of the Church of Nisan. So that's like the FBI stealing the Pope on live television. It's a power move. They want the Fatima Jasper, which they believe to be a piece of jewelry she has that can unlock ancient treasure in the far-off land of Fort Jasper. Now, obviously the boys agree to help out, and it results in what I feel is like a definitive crowd pleaser. Devised in an evening, this crack team sets out on the espionage mission of a lifetime. Seeing Bart swimming in sewers for like 20 minutes while Faye enters Shakan's fighting tournament. And you slam back and forth between these two plot lines after each fight. And the fights are really fun because of course this is an opportune Big Joe moment, but it's also the introduction of the Wise Man, a masked character that fights in a near identical way to Faye, just better, with much more seniority. Very clearly, they're related in some way. You'll see. But one of the coolest things to ever happen in this game occurs in this tourney. Because what character have we met so far that could benefit the most from beating Faye senseless? Yeah, it might be who you're thinking. And traveling miles and miles alone, he steps onto the cobblestone to face his biggest monster. Dan meets with Faye again, rage gurgling in his chest. Xenogears rewards a story-wise player, because if you absolutely refuse to touch Dan and let him fruitlessly pummel you, he'll erupt into a fit of tear-stained rage, and he'll throw Alice's fucking wedding dress at you and stomp away. And that dress stays in your inventory for the rest of the game. And you could miss this if you hit him even once. This game is fucking peak. Once Bart gets into the keep to save Margie, he's finally met with Gebler's own Team Rocket, Kahran Ramsus and his friends with benefits, Myong. Ramsus leads the 4 elements of the Jugend Military Academy of Solaris, so he's a very decorated soldier. Imagine the frustration he has when Bart slaps the fuck out of both of them before Faye shows up. The moment Ramsus sees Faye, he starts crashing out, having flashbacks. He has no clue why, he just knows he hates Faye's guts. But eventually, they beat them, and then they meet back up with Elly, who assures a safe passage. And of course, by the end of it, Faye's like, "Baby, please, come with me." And for obvious reasons, she's like, "That's a horrible fucking idea." So of course, it doesn't happen. And all while that's going on, Ramsus swears he'll fucking skewer Faye if it's the last thing he does. And then finally, the crew heads towards Nisan in the overworld. Yeah, this is the first time you get to actually pilot the Yggdrasil, and it's just so cool. I love the overland travel. And yeah, Margie gets to show you around the home turf, and lore dumps a ton of exposition. Mainly about Mother Sophia, the founder of this religious sect, who is... That's Elly. That is a portrait of Ellyhayym van Houten. Who are we fooling? It's also our first time ever that we get one of these. Huh. I wonder what that's about. Now, after all of this, Margie is able to help explain the iconography of the church, like these 2 one-winged angels representing humanity, dependent on the kindness of one another to rise to heaven. I love Nisan. Something about this place just, it feels well-rounded. It's nice. The crew eventually get the bright idea to double dip in Aveh. Let's use the confusion to take down Shakan, they think to themselves. And it's actually a pretty funny confrontation. I'm pretty sure Bart calls him like Baldy or something. But before that happens, there's a few neat scenes that I'd like to talk about. Like Ramsus having nightmares of getting his shit kicked in by the strawberry blonde. And Faye fighting Elly in a gear battle, prompting a flashback of that same gory night in the hallway. And we learned that this is all the fault of a Solarian experimental drug known as Drive. It's more or less like a performance-enhancing drug. It makes people extremely aggressive and pulls out their, quote, latent abilities. Only if you have the potential to use drive does it actually do anything for you, though. It's extremely addictive and it has a ton of side effects, and that's what was going on in that flashback with Elly. And when Faye beats Elly in a battle, she, just nukes our eyeballs, and then they have another star-crossed moment to lament their differences. And this leads to an all-out mech battle in the desert where Grahf gives Gebler the upper hand. And that makes Faye very, very angry, and he blacks out again. And Bart is left alone to fight Ramsus. And just as it looks like he's about to bite it, Strawberry Blonde makes the most frightening appearance in the whole game.
Are you strong? What the fuck?
He beats the ever-loving fuck out of the duo, and then he drops Yggdrasil on Bart. While all the lights are flashing and screaming, Sigurd makes Satan escape against his will, leaving him the only known survivor of this incident. Amidst the chaos, Ramsus orders Kislev troops to transport an unconscious Faye to Nortune, the nation's capital. And while he's unconscious, we are gifted this flashback of Faye and his mother Kahran, while the two play ball outside their house. And very visibly, you start to see this memory degrade into something of an old film, and Faye witnesses this. Yeah. And while he's here, he's fitted with these slave collars from Fallout that just threaten to turn him into paste should he leave. This stint in prison is filled with these gladiator-style gear fights that, you know what, they last entirely too long. It's not my favorite. This is predicated by a hazing from the current reigning champ, infamous demi-human Ricardo Banderas, better known as Rico, who's hell-bent on assassinating Kaiser Sigmund, the current ruler of Kislev. And Faye is just a little speed bump on the way. Once again, not all bad though, because there are people who are glad to see him. Yeah, Satan snuck his way in, claiming to be a medic, and he's gonna get him the hell out of there. And speaking of friendly faces, this is where we meet Hammer, another demi-human. He's a very excitable gear mechanic who quickly endears himself to Faye. He's a funny guy, I like this guy. Climbing the championship ladder, Faye soon beats Rico and claims the title. And you'd think he'd be horribly pissed about losing that power, but in reality, he just kinda wants to get the fuck out of Dodge after getting framed for murder. And honestly, everybody's interests kinda seem to align, so why not work together to clear Rico's name and get out of Nortune? And that would see them deep within the city's sewers solving a murder mystery of a bunch of Kislev soldiers. And while sifting through the bodies, Rico can find a bell amulet on a soldier, which he stashes. But eventually, the creature stalking them makes itself known and assaults the party, known as Red Rum. He was the first kind of tough boss for me, and I honestly found his presence haunting. So yeah, they beat Red Rum, and then Satan checks in with King Tut, but I'm sure your head's hurting already, so I'm just gonna move on. And now that it's official that Faye is elected champ, he's granted an audience with the Kaiser. And Rico takes that opportunity to sneak in due to the lax security. And when he's discovered, he tucks away into the Kaiser's wife's room, where he discovers something terrible. Not only is Rico the Kaiser's son, but memories start to rise to the surface. Life before demi-humanity, where his mother had been targeted by a mysterious organization in an attempt to disrupt the family line. Rico himself began to mutate, and they exiled he and his mother from the royal family. They also lied to the Kaiser, saying his wife and child had both died. And once Empress Anne, his mother, really did pass, they pit Rico against Sigmund, which would only ramp up the discrimination of demi-humans. And trust me, when we discover the group that's responsible for this, You'll see just how deep that rabbit hole goes. So unfortunately, Ricdeau is recaptured, and he's meant to battle a Ren car with no gear, which it's a death sentence. And Faye does step in to save him, but Ricdeau seems resistant. Until the sounds of shells rock the earth and Kislev's worst fears come alive. Solaris begins their purge on Kislev, and Faye and Ricdeau focus their attention on the bomb ship Hecht, piloted by Dominia Yizkor, one of the 4 elements, who will become a real fucking pain in the neck. And Elly also shows up with a Solarian troop and is caught between her subordinates and Faye. Elly has to make a decision between all she's ever known or all she could ever have. And it's not easily that she makes her decision. Ricdeau and Faye fight tooth and nail to stop the ship from colliding with Kislev, but their gears begin to overheat. And in a selfless move, Elly acts to save countless lives at the cost of hers. Holding Hecht back with sheer will alone, her fortitude begins to slip. And just as her life is nearly claimed, the Strawberry Blonde comes to her aid. This allows everyone to flee to their momentary safety. And everyone seems to realize that if they're gonna get out of Nortune, well, they're gonna need a ride. So they steal the Goliath, an absolutely massive propeller battleship intended to bomb Aveh. So they're just saving more lives by stealing it and leaving. And it looks like it's going well. I mean, everything's fine and dandy until Grahf shows up again. Fuck. And of course, you know he's using this opportunity to farm aura again. Now, this battle is kind of stacked against you. You don't have to win it, but you can actually manage to kick Grahf's ass. And no matter what happens, he still fucks off, and everybody seems in pretty good spirits about their escape. Except Bart, who is seeing a doomsday device head for the place he's meant to rule. So I guess we get to see what a Bart missile is. And just like that, the Goliath goes plummeting into the deep sea. Nice one, Bart. Once he realizes the grave error he's made, Bart fishes up Satan, Ricdeau, and Hammer. But Faye and Elly aren't anywhere to be found. Elsewhere, within the floating wreckage, belongs another one of my favorite vignettes. Though it isn't the first time Faye and Elly are alone, Elly has made a definitive choice in the war. Whether she likes it or not, she's stuck with these knuckleheads for life. She's made her decision. And finally, we get to see the two in a lighter situation for once. Faye's trying to catch a fish, and Elly chews him out if he decides to eat it raw. It's cute. And amidst their bickering, the two hear a strange noise, and they look to the sky. And once again, that floating city towers above the endless sea. And Elly illuminates us that this is what remains of the airborne country of Shevat. Once her people's natural enemy, the Shevat-Solaris War obliterated the royal family about 500 years ago, leaving the council no choice but to uproot its surviving capital, Afel Ora, and take to the sky. Okay, maybe she didn't say all of that. It's a little editorial, I'm telling you this. Eventually, the duo are fished up by the Thames. A very similar concept to Shevat. It's just a big old city on a big old boat. That's all you need. It's pretty awesome. And here they meet a slew of important characters, the funniest of which to me is a man simply known as Captain. He's a walrus demi-human who takes every opportunity to do this. Much to the chagrin of his helmsman Hans, a dolphin man. I like Captain a lot. Like, he hardly knows these guys, but he's just super kind, very gregarious, lovely character. But who isn't very kind is Josiah Jesse Black, 1/4 of the original elements of the Jugend of Gebler. And you can likely guess who his old classmates are, given that he's a Solarian dissident. It's honestly funny just how much he antagonizes Satan and Sigurd. And antagonizing is the chief word here. The first thing Shevat's finest does when he recognizes Elly's military garb is to point a gun right at her fucking head. Now, Jesse becomes very helpful down the line, but he never becomes any less of an asshole. He's still a fun character, it's just, he's an asshole. A lot happens on the Thames, almost all at once. Firstly, the party does reunite, yippee, and Bart gets to apologize for fucking this one up. And very shortly after that, Gebler lays the place to near ruin. They kidnap Elly and brainwash her to unsuccessfully sabotage the ship. And Ramsus, hardly hiding his hate boner, obliterates Faye in a one-on-one fight so badly he's left in critical condition. And once the dust finally settles, Elly and Satan search for anyone who could get Faye on his feet. And it's gonna be tough. I think the only person who can make good on such a promise would be maybe an Etone from the Church of Ethos. And luckily for the crew, upon the Thames is one such man. The timid son of Josiah, Billy Lee Black. Billy is one hell of a character when you put it all on paper. He's a gun-toting priest who protects the world from hostile demi-humans, and he runs an orphanage with his mute sister. He's an extremely pious guy, which puts him at odds with his bastard father, making for one of the more interesting contrasts in this relationship world tree. Billy's willing to drag Faye to the Ethos HQ to receive the best possible care known to both man and God, under the condition that he and the rest of the party help him clear the Wells, those same demi-humans, from a Solarian facility. And while Faye recovers, the crew does acquiesce. But first, a quick pit stop at that orphanage, where quite a slew of interesting things occur. The first of which happens if you bring along Rico to meet a child lying in bed, lamenting about his father who's yet to return home from Ethos HQ. You see, his father said he'd swing back around and come and get him when life finally slowed down, and he'd know it was him because he'd present him with a bell amulet that matches his own. Ooh. Rico is able to give this back to the child, and totally lies his ass off about where his dad is. But he doesn't take the news well regardless. You did your best, Rico.
Great.
And while we're here at the orphanage, I feel like it's a perfect time to discuss Billy's story, who honestly is just a good kid on the wrong side of history. He was born on Solaris to Josiah and Raquel Blanche, and at that same time, Sigurd was recovering from a drive addiction in Raquel's home. So Billy and Siggy, as he'd call him, grew very, very close. So it makes sense. He was closest to Sigurd and his mother, and that's probably where he inherited that thoughtful, quiet nature from. And by the time he was 7 years old, Jesse had fully defected from Solaris, and the family fled southwest to a place known as Aquavie. Now under Shavat's banner, Jesse sought to teach Billy the art of the gun to protect himself. So while Billy is training, some 2 odd years later, his sister, Primera, would be born. And with her barely even able to walk yet, Jesse had fled their home as to not endanger them when Solaris came knocking. And little did he know, it would not be Solaris who would be knocking at their door. No, in fact, it would be the Wells who would approach the family in the dead of night. Refusing to give any information up, Raquel made her children hide behind a grandfather clock, while she herself was slaughtered, while the two watched in horror. This eradicates Billy's psyche, obviously. And with such a broken home, this would sink Billy to such depths to provide for his family, he even mentions nearly selling his body just to feed his sister. And the person to pull him from the depths would be our next oddity, Bishop Stone, or Uncle Stone, as the children like to call him. I'm not even gonna beat around the bush for dramatic tension. He's fucking evil. He's just fucking evil. When he tells Billy that he hasn't heard from Solaris after their run-in with the Wells, he tells him to do, quote, the usual. Billy doesn't question it, it's all he knows, but, you know, Stone doesn't have to hide a fucking thing. He's fucking awful. But yeah, they listen. Eventually they do clear out all the Wells and prepare to leave for Ethos HQ, only to realize that something is amiss. And once they walk through the doors, their suspicions are confirmed. Bodies litter the floors, blood flows through the cracks of the cobblestone, and it's clear that Ethos has been raised by the wells. And something really interesting happens here. The churchgoers themselves, with little paraphrasing, feel like they deserved it. And pressing deeper into the matter, the crew finds a control deck that gives them answers they weren't even searching for. Ethos acts as a shell operation, not for Solaris, but for the Gazelle Ministry, an impossibly old group of geezers who have transcended humanity 40k style. They were created to participate in a 9,000-year fetch quest, and that's pretty much resulted in everything evil and fucked up in this world. All you'll need to really understand from this is that the most dominant religion in the world is a front for surveillance on the land dwellers. Not only that, Ethos's portfolio for world domination is extremely lengthy. To list just a few things that Ethos is responsible for, like excavating Zeboim, controlling the history of Gears, poisoning Rico's mother, creating the wells by complete fucking accident, funneling supplies into Solaris, and providing slaves for Solaris's cloaking tech, the Ignis Gate. Straight up the hardest working group in Evil's history. And of course, Bishop Stone was not satisfied with being a peon to the floating chat GPT. So he created the E-Tones as an insurrectionist group and indoctrinated Billy. So his purging of the wells was merely a cover so that he could get away with stealing Zeboim tech. And if he can mark the Gears as classified, that would allow him to run a monopoly on the war. And this rampage happening right now is of course his way of tying up loose ends. Any traitors to Solaris must be eliminated. And that includes our heroes, who are saved, thank goodness, by Jesse, who shows back up to spit in Stone's eye, which actually regains the favor of his son, even if only for a moment. But that's nice. Unfortunately though, Stone is able to shuffle away in a nice fancy gear known as Alkenshell. But everybody's safe and in one piece, so it's a win. So the party does regroup, and they locate the Ethos fleet that Stone had fled with. The time and location are a bit unfortunate because they're currently carpet bombing the Thames. And while the ship boils in the fumes, the Gazelle Ministry watches on, gawking at the cruelty of the responsible party. It seems the actions of one man, and it makes them wonder if perhaps his faith is waning. Our heroes do make it to the Thames in time to kick some ass and save those who remain. But they're also hot on the trail of their quarry. If they can make it to the Ethos' excavation site, maybe they can catch them. So, they plunge deep underground into unknown territory, unsure of the future. And while they do so, we get an aside with Grahf and Myung, which illuminates that Faye's gear is not only beginning to awaken, but something within him shall soon do the same. And perhaps as expected, yes, the crew are in Zeboim, and they will be amongst the first few to see it in 4,000 years. And once they finally settle in at this obliterated vista, Elly starts losing her fucking mind. She's speaking like she was there when it fell. And when she does snap back, she seems completely unaware that she was speaking like an old wizard.
How did you get here?
But the zenith of this moment occurs in a hallway before a massive test chamber, seeing herself covered head to toe in blood. And for a second, you might think this a callback to her gory moment in Solaris, but you'd be dead fucking wrong, buddy. She starts speaking to herself as a presumably omnipresent figure. And when Satan walks in on her, she asks the obvious. Who am I? What am I saying? While they speak, Billy watches a hatch open, and inside of a glimmering tube of liquid sleeps a little girl. The group ponder on how such a thing could even happen, and they're answered by Stone himself. She's a colony of nanomachines, and to him it's a salvation of humanity, and it must be in the hands of the deserving. He twists Ethos' mantra back on Billy, stating that a man named Krelian can use this technology to save some of the chosen people. Truly, all he wants from Zeboim is this girl. Gears be damned. And if he's willing to forego some of the most powerful weapons in history just for this little girl, well then what in the world is she capable of? and we may never get to know, because Stone sicks Talone and Seraphita, 2 of the elements, on our ass. And very fun characters. Love Talone being the straight man to Seraphita's like airheaded comets. They're 2 very accomplished assassins and they act like children. Very fun characters. Yeah, we do eventually wipe the floor with these 2 and then hustle our way to the labyrinthine city to finally catch back up with Stone. Which leads us to one of the most dramatic scenes in this game. And our strawberry blonde finally makes a proper introduction. He is Id, and he is demanding that Stone release the girl. And I'll tell you, Id is an absolutely malevolent force. He is an angry whirlwind of fists. More than any boss in this game, he consistently kicked my fucking teeth in. That's a tough son of a bitch. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think the team would canonically survive this encounter without...
Yoink.
The wise man. He just fucking grabs him. That's the coolest shit ever, man. And thanks to him, the team get to lick their wounds and get the hell out of there. And when they finally get back to the Yggdrasil, they find a hapless Fae in the gear bay. Oh yeah? Just getting out of your gear, pal? Why is it smoking? I thought we repaired that thing. Yeah, you're on thin ice, fucker. Before any questions can arise, Stone shows back up in Alconshell to blow up the Yggdrasil. And what's really fucked up about this one is that Stone is now fused to the gear. It's one of Corellian's favorite things to do. You're definitely gonna see it again. It's nasty. Stone's looking for Billy specifically, and Grahf shows up to be the evil sugar daddy that he is, giving Stone this hate barrier, making him invincible. That's only for a moment though, and I honestly think it was the only time it happens. I can't remember. Jesse shows up in his gear and blows it up, knocks it down, and Stone goes with it. Good riddance, motherfucker. And with Jesse stepping up so much to get rid of Stone, it actually like makes Primera speak. I forgot to even mention, that's nuts, right? And now that the dust is settled, the party realizes there's no way they're winning against Solaris by themselves. They need to meet with the originators of the blood feud, Shevat, which brings them to the Babel Tower, a dizzyingly large obelisk of unknowable technology that is chock full of these stupid fucking jump puzzles. And if you've been particularly astute, the tower itself, might seem kind of familiar to you. Yeah, if you're wondering what happened to the Eldridge and its debris after the crash, I've got your answer. The largest pieces that remained would belong to the Earth, and to the primitive people, they would become these holy sites. For one, the Babel Tower is fashioned from the Babel block, the front hull of the Eldridge. It just so happened to land perpendicular, acting as a monolithic structure, and home to the most advanced civilization of the time. Shevat, as explained, was originally part of this tower, using the second block to make the city. And as depicted in the country flag here, Shevat departed from the Babel Tower and now wanders the sky. And Solaris, copying their homework, is made of similar debris and is also kind of in the sky. Several other pieces and installations that fell from space will soon make their appearances. For instance, Fort Jasper, the Fatima hideaway, is said to be, in reductive terms, a giant cannon that could obliterate anything. Where have we seen a giant cannon before? When they finally get to the top of the tower, the crew are met with another Aura farmer, Maria Balthazar, the great-granddaughter from the dude in that fucking cave. And she is the pilot of Zeepshin. And it makes perfect sense because this is the 17th incarnation of her father's experiments to implement human consciousness into gears. And the good news is that she already seems to like us, but if we're gonna get into the floating city, we're gonna need to best her in battle. Because it's a video game, I guess. It's fine. And when we do, we finally get to see Shevat. And god damn is it a beautiful place. And with many a breathtaking sight, illuminates Athel Aura as a ghost of what was once close to utopia. Instead now, frigid winds howl through the slats of bleached stone. And those lucky enough to have seen the world beneath them change, count the clouds in solemn peace. And it really makes me wonder what this place would have looked like before the war, when it was still part of the Eldritch. That sightseeing doesn't last though, because once we're here, it's straight business. They need to meet with Queen Zephyr, the big kahuna herself. And how cool of me to tell you the city's history beforehand, because now you know she's the sole royal survivor of the Solaris Shavat War. And you might be wondering why she looks like 15 tops, despite that taking place 500 years ago. Well, she amongst the 3 wise sages have been, quote, cursed with eternal life through nanotechnology. All thanks to Corellian. This guy's a dickhead, what's up with this dude? Zephyr offers Shavat's alliance, but tells the heroes to make haste with their decision. Mechanically, this is a chance to run dungeons with Maria, but narratively, I feel like it's a chance for loose ends to be tied. Several different side stories run in Shavat, but my favorite, of course, is with Satan and his wife, Yui Uzuki, who is this badass martial artist and the granddaughter of one of the 3 sages of Shavat. Gaspar Uzuki, who led Satan and Jesse in the 3rd invasion of Shavat. And it's revealed that Yui gathered both her daughter Midori and the Lahan refugees to evacuate from Shavat. That's why when we see it for the first time, it's over Dazil, near Black Moon Forest, likely just after picking up those refugees. And if all of that wasn't cool enough for you, Yui gives a parting gift to Satan, his grandfather's badass fucking sword. What? He swore he'd never pick it up again after the invasion, but now he's got no other choice. Insane. We also get an aside where Jesse informs Satan on his decision to join them in Solaris.
Listen, Hyuga. I'm going to Solaris too. Don't misunderstand me. Doesn't mean I'll help you. I don't know what you're thinking, or trying to do, but if you take their side, I'll kill you without a doubt, even from the back.
Yes, I will be counting on that.
So discouraging.
And have I mentioned that Choo Choo exists yet? I don't think I've mentioned Choo Choo at all. You remember that stuffed animal that Margie has? That's a living being. And not only is she sapient, she's, like, honestly pretty cheeky. She's a charmer, that Choo Choo. Party's over, by the way, because Dominia snuck in and she turned off all the shield generators. And then Jesse tells her to just go the fuck home. Maria's the only one who can pilot the gear anyways. She kind of seems to listen, but when you think about it, Dominia being here means the absolute worst, huh? And yes, it sure does. Solaris invades. And who is this helmed by? Nikolai Balthazar, Maria's father. And he is an Octazin, with his brainwashed mind fully integrated into the machine. Everybody's kicking some ass. They could really take this guy. Until he freezes everybody's gears. Suddenly, panic. Until, boom! Choo Choo comes in and saves the motherfucking day. She grows like 1,000 times her size and starts just beating the shit out of Nikolai, who thankfully comes to his senses. He then transfers himself into Saibjin, and then Maria fucking atomizes her father. And finally, for just a moment, everybody can relax, revel in their victory. And they take that moment to do just that. But guess who's talking in secrecy? Queen Zephyr, Gaspar, and the Wise Man. And they're confirming our suspicions. Elly is learning about some sort of unconscious existence within her that resonates with the Lady Sophia. And they debate whether or not they should temper with their limiters. And not only does this resonance with Lady Sophia awaken something within her, it awakens something deep within Shavat. Something called an Omnigear.
Choo Choo will go anywhere, even to the end of the world with you.
Thank you, Choo Choo. I love you. The party regroups in the royal chamber, and together they discover the 3 gates that must be destroyed to infiltrate Solaris. This would include the aforementioned Ignis Gate, Ethos HQ, and Sargasso Point. The first gate's location is actually pretty convenient because it's in the heart of Nisan, which Shakan is finally prepared to take. So, he and his minions assault Fort Jasper, where he uncovers Andwari, the royal omnigear belonging to Roni Fatima, Bart's ancestor. When the crew arrive, they reveal something pretty neat. The Fatima Jasper is in fact not two halves of a necklace like Shakan believes, but the topaz blue pupils of the Fatima family. And Bart having one eye is probably how that rumor propagated. And when they finally get in there, a whole mess of shit happens. Mainly the face-off, where Margie hops into the Omnigear in a heroic stand. But unfortunately, a bullet pierces her leg, and she faints from the blood loss. And in a rage, Bart chases a retreating Shakan to an unmarked cave and clobbers him to fucking death, which in turn also destroys the first gate. With the minister out of the way and Margie safe, that gives the throne back to its rightful heir, the Fatima family. And in a scene where he addresses his people, Bart makes a brave decision to establish Aveh as a republic and relinquish his position as would-be king. And later that night is another one of my favorite vignettes, where he meets with Sigurd. Bart illuminates that he knows how and why Sigurd found him. You see, when Sigurd was in the Jugend of Gebler, he had secretly gone through his own files, discovering he was born from an affair with the royalty of Aveh, Edbart IV, and a remote colonist named Shalimar Harcourt. He would lose his mother at a relatively young age due to a terminal illness, which caused her to flee back to the countryside, where he would eventually be kidnapped by Gebler and raised as a super soldier. But as early as 17 years old, he defected once hearing about a coup d'etat on his half-brother by Minister Shakan. There's even a flashback way earlier in the game, one I've shown you quite a bit, where Ramsus takes Sigurd's leave as a personal rejection to his character, and he swears vengeance like a big baby, like he always does. But ever since that departure, Sigurd has been a shadowy figure, an enigmatic guide for Bartholomew. Bart's pretty cheeky about what he knows, but his father told him he must share his inheritance with his brother. And without even knowing what he meant, he knew to honor that dying wish. And before they take down Solaris together, he thought he'd let him know that his half is waiting for him. What a chill dude. You know what? I kind of forgive Bart. I kind of forgive him. So now that Fort Jasper is free to use, Billy appropriates the very intricate plans devised by the Fatima family. He's got to bank a shot off the Babel Tower and obliterate Ethos HQ Peggle style. And if that wasn't hard enough, they're already being harassed by the elements, who are shockingly close to forming some sort of Voltron. It's weird. Eventually though, they do fuck off and Billy finally gets it right, making a crater out of the church, which makes 2 gates down. And sometime later, Corellian is seen doing damage control with the Gazelle Ministry, and the most important topic that he's going over is about cloning Emperor Cain. And he also thinks that the mother exists within the lambs, and the gene will activate when the host reaches a certain age, so it's only going to be a matter of time before, quote, the persona appears again. If I've been doing this right, I'm sure you're catching on. Meanwhile, fresh after their victory in Fort Jasper, the team meet with the captain of Thames to locate Sargasso Point. And inside the abyss lies the 3rd gate, installed in an air pocket cave. And when they finally make it there, they see what Corellian and Stone were up to this whole time. Mind-controlling Emeralda, the little girl we saw earlier. She's a toughie, I gotta say, but once they kick her butt, they blow up the last gate and convince her to come along with them. And upon the Yggdrasil, Emeralda seems extremely attached and very dependent upon Faye. Really excitable and happy to be reunited, but the odd thing about it all is what she refers to Faye as. Not only as a father figure, but under a different name. She calls him Kim. And she really doesn't listen to another living soul. That's her daddy, and it's futile for Faye to protest. I promise that comes up again, just not for a long time, honestly. Anyways, let's not distract from the fact that the gates are now wide open, and Solaris reveals itself to the waking world. and our party has very little time to put their heads together and infiltrate the soaring city. The result of their plans is the most hype anime shit you can imagine this game pulling. Maria, atop the shoulders of Saibjin, punches through these sonic Grahf barriers, and with her core team in her literal hands, she sends them off to Solaris's waste facility. And with the entire team crowding the gear, they all wish them well, and she whisks them to safety. This is some of the coolest shit this game ever does. Like, that's fucking awesome. Once they get to this leg of the trip, Faye has to climb the social strata of Solaris, which shows just how dizzying to live here. It's kind of nauseating. Eventually, Elly and Faye overhear an announcement, and as a crowd forms, they quietly lend an ear. And when Faye lays eyes on Corellian for the first time, he remarks how familiar he looks. And immediately, the game relays a flashback, where a figure reminiscent of Faye, known as Lacan, speaks with a blue-haired Corellian. The duo catch up after a brief distance from one another, mentioning how both their lives have been in some way improved by the Lady Sophia's presence, deeply implying a romantic partnership between Lacan and Sophia. And as quickly as that appears, it fades. And tuning back in on the announcement of the capture of their friends, Faye starts having a public freakout, and that catches the attention of the Solaris Guard, who sicks some security cubes on the duo. And now they have no choice but to run for their lives in the single most irritating section of the game. The pursuit ends in the two escaping to Elly's house, which, I mean, that's an extremely fancy place. I wish we saw more of this. Other than Elly carefully watching Faye take a shower, okay, a load of shit happens here. Like meeting Medina and eventually Eric, Elly's parents. And with him being ex-Gebler, this leads to a lot of drama. And of course, he still defends his daughter with his life, but most shockingly is him letting Faye escape, because he understands that Faye protected his daughter. If he kills Faye, he loses Elly. So when the guard arrive, we learn that Corellian himself has ordered custody of Elly, and putting his entire life on the line, Eric buys her time to run. And she does. And that results in Elly, Citan, and Faye meeting up in a dust chute on the way to Kane's palace. But on the way there, they need to pass through the mysterious Soylent system. But you know what? I'm kind of hungry. Let's just get a little snack in before we go, huh? And when they put that down, Citan is certain that Faye wouldn't want to know where this tinned food comes from, and he stops him from opening a door to the factory, but Faye insists. And what he sees? Yeah, everybody's eating demi-humans, specifically the whales. It's fucked. It's absolutely fucked. No doubt a translated reference to the movie Soylent Green.
Soylent Green is people!
I'm almost certain. There's no way it isn't. And even worse, Citan just let the two eat it, which is undoubtedly a dick move. Is my goat washed? Who knows? And when Elly explains that the system was initially used for human experimentation and brainwashing, it prompts a flashback in Faye of the exact same nature. Huh. But now this is all used for the Gazelle Ministry's M project, something Citan can attest to. And whatever the result of the M project is, well, we're gonna have to face that in the near future. Fuck. And as they plunge deeper and deeper into the heart of Solaris, something's starting to bother Elly. Citan knows this place backwards and forward. He's not leaving a stone unturned. And even more strangely, he finds access to every secured location. That's not something an element could do, let alone a Gebler officer. This infiltration is going on without a hitch. And for Solaris's level of security, this can't be an accident. So, en route to their next destination, Elly confronts him. All those facilities were unmanned? Not likely. And how the hell does Citan know about the M project? Jesse doesn't seem to know a thing. More than any living being on this planet, Citan always seems to have the answers. So answer us this. Just who the hell is Citan Uzuki anyway? Faye awakens in Sol 9000. Screaming in frustration and fear, the Gazelle Ministry show him undeniable truth. Flashes of the destruction of Lahan appear on screen, alongside every friend he has ever made, either captured or working with the enemy. Sold out by his closest friend, Faye learns of the Gazelle's plans. They intend to align him with the Anima, which will in turn resurrect the Ministry. And as their agent, Satan has concluded a 3-year journey, babysitting Faye, the Gazelle's pet project. And with their corporeal forms, they can finally complete Project M after 9,999 years. Together, they will assemble and resurrect God, and with him, Mahanon will rise. And most hauntingly, the Gazelle dish the full truth of this world. And exactly as I've explained before, the resting place of God, Mahanon, is very real. And when the gate lifts and it is revealed to the world, well, it's precisely what you think it is. They explain not only that, but that every human being born on this planet is the offspring of one entity.
Deus, the Demiurge.
Using the Eldritch's system Hawa, it integrated itself into a human-like form, assuming the identity of the mother of humanity. And throughout those 909,999 years, it's watched and reset humanity at will in the ever-changing form of Miahawa, or Miang. And with its 2 first creations at its side, Emperor Cain and the Gazelle Ministry, it's been waiting for the perfect specimens to reassemble itself and rise to godhood again. And if that wasn't enough to make your head spin, Corellian patches in to show his newest test subject, Ellyhayym van Houten. In an aside with each other, Corellian illuminates upon her incident at the Yugen Academy last year, where the drive unleashed her inner self and turned every omnipresent eye in her direction. And while Corellian goes digging through her genetic makeup, he finds the Urobolus gene, which reveals Elly to not only be a synthetic human being, but she shares DNA with, quote, the mother. And that's been in front of our face the entire time. And with that shaking news, he reminisces. Elly hasn't changed a bit since the last time he saw her with Lacan. And we hard cut to Satan just bullying the fuck out of Faye. And it's starting to become apparent why he needs to get a rise out of him. And once he finally gets him to break, well...
Now, we may take our time and talk, id.
Elly awakes to a frantic Ramsus, who is freaking the fuck out.
I need to beat his ass. Where is he? Take me to my fucking hell.
And then he just storms out. Okay. And when Faye finally reawakens, he starts tweaking too. But Bart and Billy stop him. And they're like, dude, chill out, okay? Like, Satan was lying. He was lying that whole time. He was just trying to talk to the evil monster in your subconscious. And that's true, actually. Satan is an emissary of Emperor Cain, who doesn't get along with his old friends anymore. Cain's really only interested in making sure that humanity escapes Deus, and he believes Faye to be the man to save them from such a fate. And Satan agrees. And in perfect anti-hero fashion, he's willing to take the fall for humanity, even if it means looking like a lying bitch. Also, they removed everybody's limiters. Can we just go save Elly now? And while the youngins go save Miss Houten, the Unks are wrecking the place up, which then are interrupted by Ramsus, who is like,
oh, so nobody's loyal, huh? You all hate me, don't you?
And then he has a tantrum and explodes. And there's just so much shit happening in Solaris all at the same time. Like, the game is, it's jam-packing so much in here. To make the stretch manageable after such a lore dump, I'm just gonna lay it out like this, okay? Basically, Hammer is confronted by Corellian, who threatens to mutate the fuck out of him unless he captures Elly. And the entire crew would have made it out of Solaris unscathed, likely, if not for that proposition, resulting in Elly being at the business end of a barrel. And Medina, being the saint she is, intervenes and attempts to talk Hammer down. And in a blind panic, he pulls the trigger. The gun drops, and Hammer, scurries away in fear. And to make matters even worse, Grahf and Myung show up to obliterate the crew. But Eric, Elly's father, shows up in a Solaris Guard gear only to be struck down in the same manner. In his dying breath, he exclaims that she must believe in herself, and this is the least he could do to make this up to her. And within minutes of each murder, Elly is orphaned. And you would think that would awaken the Ouroboros gene, but instead, Faye loses his marbles, and Id comes out to play. It is the worst possible outcome, because Veltal Id is such a destructive gear, Faye unintentionally destroys Solaris. That's millions of civilian casualties. In fact, that's straight up annihilation of an entire society. That's fucking bad. That's really bad. And while Solaris makes a crater in the earth, the crew escapes unscathed. And in the most shonen move ever, Elly makes the fucking coolest power move. Faye's put his life on the line like 6 times for her. She feels like now's the best time to repay the favor. Farming so much aura, she gets in her gear and practically rips Faye out of Id, claiming she's never gonna let go of the man inside. Faye, if you don't marry this woman, you're a fucking idiot. And with Faye safe and sound, the council quietly decides, like, we gotta put this dude in the Han Solo carbonite. He committed genocide. And lastly, Zatan and Kane speak, to which Kane finally lets his grip on the mission go. Humanity no longer needs a custodian, and he feels such that he atones for his crimes by doing so. I don't really think that's up to you, Kane, but whatever. And when things are finally settling down, Zatan explains to his colleagues the discussion he had with Id, claiming that Faye suffers from dissociative identity disorder, and once again, he's right. Inside Faye belongs 3 personalities. There's the Faye we know and love, Id the Destroyer, and someone Id dubs the Coward, a Faye who cannot reconcile with some event that traumatized him, endlessly replaying memories of safety. He also reveals that Grahf and Id were the best of buddies, hence why he keeps showing up to bully Id out of Faye. And Id is responsible for so many big problems in the background of Xenogears, like obliterating Elru, Dominia's homeland, and killing those soldiers in the sewer, just to name a few. So it's probably, for the best to keep this guy locked away until they can find a way for him to cope with a lifelong disorder. Or Elly can pry him out of stasis. Alright. So they start flying away in Veltal to escape star-crossed lover style. But, guess who's here to ruin shit? Ramsus. Swearing lifelong vengeance against Faye, he puts all he's got into it, and he decks Veltal, sending the duo plummeting into the earth below. And pulling themselves from the wreckage, a panicked Faye carries Elly to safety as she hemorrhages gouts of blood, and the screams of anguish drown in the calls of the forest, all while Grahf watches fate unfold. And that is Disc 1 of Xenogears. What a cliffhanger. What even happens after that? I'm sure you're asking me. Development hell. That's what happened. Though Square was gracious enough to give the team a shot at developing the game, they were very strict about their terms. Teams were allowed 2 years maximum as a hard limit to produce their games. No exceptions. It was pretty obvious to the team that Xenogears was not going to hit that deadline. Square's higher-up suggested that they conclude the game after the first disc, ending with an escape from Solaris. It was a rough way to end it, and I felt like if we do that, then the players will not be satisfied. So, we had a proposal. I proposed that if we do Disc 2 in this way that it turned out to be, we can finish the game with the current number of staff and the current time allotted for the schedule, and the remaining budget that we have. Put simply, the Xenogears team was comprised entirely of new staff, and they were working with bleeding-edge technology. So unfortunately, they painted themselves into a corner. The Xeno team had virtually no time to both develop the game and educate their younger staff, so no one was able to deny that the same hand that fed them had eventually closed. And if the rumors were true, nobody took that harder than Takahashi. So, burning the candle at both ends, Disc 2 is a massive compromise between Takahashi's vision and Square's. with so many important plot points consisting of characters sitting Shinji style, narrating behind these gigantic PNGs. With such a slow build to a breakneck ending to the first act, yeah, this does render some of the finale limp-wristed, and this undoubtedly kneecaps the game's pacing. However, the story is still shining through those limitations, and it's an honest-to-God miracle. It feels like they wanted an entire disc just to play the parts that are in the text alone. And thankfully, the cutscenes and battles that do survive the chop turn out as nothing short of a masterpiece.
We had initially planned it as a 1-disc game, but we ended up having 2 discs thanks to Takahashi-kun's ever-expanding world. Even with that, 2 discs didn't seem enough to him, and he wanted to separate it into a part 1 and a part 2.
And that's precisely what happened. Every Xenogears fan has 2 things to say when the game is mentioned. A, that it needs a remake, and B, Disc 2 is the most tragic result of game crunch the medium has maybe ever fucking seen. It sucks. But so we're all on the same page going forward. Disc 2 is very high concept. It becomes so cerebral and granular, all at this breakneck pace. So I want to be as clear as possible. For this last leg of the summary, I'm employing everything I can. Diagrams, illustrations. I just want this part to be understandable. I think it's worth the effort. Xenogears pays off on every story beat, but it's so rushed and crunched. It's really worth trying to understand these, but the game does not give you a lot of time. So I'm going to try and pull up by the bootstraps and give you some of that. Despite just how rushed it gets, Xenogears is worth it. It's really worth it. The moment the second disc begins, we get some massive answers, starting with a flashback of Faye, recalling a memory as Lacan. And whilst painting the portrait of the Mother Sophia, the two idly chat, and he jokingly refers to her as such, and she chastises him on his formalities, stating that Elly is just fine. And both people have that revelation at the same time, calling them, quote, memories of the soul. And if you're looking for a definitive answer, yes, Elly and Faye have been reincarnated ever since Deus landed on the planet, with this era being the most recent incarnation, occurring just 500 years ago, during the Solaris Shavat War. And this premonition ends back in present day. Faye and Elly both in the same tubes as, well, Emeralda was. Because luckily for the couple, they happen to have landed in the backyard of one of the 3 sages of Shavat, Torah Melchior, master of nanotechnology and mentor to Corellian. He's able to nurse Faye back to health and repair Elly's fatal wounds. And then there's a brief moment where the two get to pontificate about the shared memory and nearly get a chance to smooch. But that's interrupted by Torah's unveiling of System Id, a suppressor to his alter ego, installed within him and his gear. Mechanically, this is just a way of using Id's power in battle to, honestly trivialize certain segments of this game. It's pretty powerful. Faye decides to help Bart with his plans to build his ancestors' Eldritch Gundam of Nisan to stop Solaris' last-ditch effort at domination. And Elly hangs back, discussing her feelings with Satan, pondering if her doting for Faye is truly a feeling of her own and not just one of circumstances. And to that, Satan offers the silver lining that no matter what happens, Elly's changed, and the world's better with her in it. And her disposition has kind of changed to that of a mother, which Elly takes as an insult, but it's a weirdly clairvoyant thing for him to say. And while the respective members all do their thing, the camera pans, and Torah acknowledges a shadow, watching him work. Speaking to the Shade, he mentions how he brought them there, and honestly, they're the spitting image of the two of them back then. And he ends his monologue by asking, "Isn't that so, Lacan?" What? From here, the chapter starts whirling at a blinding pace. Put simply, Bart and Faye destroy Solaris' Fort Hurricane, and Elly, Satan, and Emeralda eliminate the concept of limiters by shooting a cure through a cannon, sprinkling fairy dust on the people of the world, thereby allowing the lambs the same biological zeniths of those of the able. And this would have healed the fucking world if Corellian didn't activate the Soylent system at the same time, mutating half of the world's populace, framing the trio for creating fodder for Deus. Faye and his boys eventually go destroy the system, but in the meantime, the Sisters of Nisan do all they can to heal those afflicted, giving Elly a makeshift Lady of Sophia arc. And this all reaches a head when they destroy the Sufal Mass, an amalgam created from the fusing of these people. And Elly fully feels the insurmountable weight of such an existential burden. The crew does eventually learn of the Anima Relics, ancient technology that can align with their gears. If they can assimilate this power into their equipment, they can ascend into their respective Omni-Gears. So, on their way to the ancient spire, reconnecting with these relics, they're intercepted by the elements. Once again. They make Voltron, okay? There's no other way I can put this. They fucking make a Voltron. I had to make sure you saw this. That's Voltron. What are you gonna take? What the fuck? And once they're defeated, Ramsus has another tantrum and tries to grab Elly while she's in the sun. He eventually fucks off, but Corellian is able to stop him and give him this gaslighting lie disguised as a pep talk. And finally we learn why Ramsus is just so murderous. He's a fucking clone, like a baby in a test tube Venture Brothers style clone.
They feel like giant Stretch Armstrongs.
He was made with Kane's DNA, set up to be a perfect candidate for something known as a contact, someone who can speak to, like, God specifically. And when Faye, a biological being, was discovered as an organic version, they straight up just aborted him into a trash chute. It's fucked. And Corellian, being the head of that procedure, uses this against Ramsus. He's like, hey, do you want to be actually useful? Go kill Kane. You're his clone. You're the only one who can kill him. Kill Kane. Kill Kane now. And he fucking does. The manipulation works wonders. And Corellian pats himself on the back for this. And he's like, you know what? Why don't I go melt that fucking rat into a gear while I'm at it? And that becomes the party's biggest heartbreak. Not only does Elly lose her parents, but Ricdeau loses his closest friend in this process. And while falling, Hammer apologizes to Faye. And not once do I remember him apologizing for orphaning Elly. That's a little fucked up. And meanwhile, now that Kane is out of the picture, the Gazelle dissipate the Mahanon gate and rise the Eldritch from the sea. And Corellian, now pleased with both his pawns, decides to shut off the Ministry, deleting them from history. He alone will become one with God. The party hear about the Eldritch rising from the ocean, and everyone on board knows this is probably the last stop. Some of them are not coming home from this. And in wake of that news, Elly confides in Faye. She knows what she feels, and she cannot bear to be apart from Faye. To lose each other would be to lose themselves. And how many JRPG protagonists do you know that have actually fucked? Very few. Congratulations on your consummation. Okay, time to book it there, to stop Corellian from locating Deus's shell. And the attempt actually goes really, really well, until they're stopped by Grahf, who dispatches them with one hand behind his back. He's fucked. And when deciding on what to do with them, Corellian proposes that Elly should find her party members in a crucifixion. Crucifixion? Wait, am I reading that right? What the fuck? They crucified Choo Choo? What do you mean they crucified Choo Choo? And upon the blasted sand, Elly arrives in her Omni-Gear, with all the bravado and balls of her ancestor Sophia. And Grahf and Corellian just start kicking the shit out of her. But no, she won't back down. And in her undying spirit, she's actually able to save everyone. But once she collapses in a heap, Corellian finds the mother spirit he's been searching for. And before the party can even react, he disappears with Elly. And Faye is alone.
Pitiful.
Corellian, now in possession of Elly, begins the construction of Merkava, Solaris' interplanetary fortress. If he can get that up and running, it would allow him to access Deus's core and speak to a true divine presence. And we can't have that. We can't have that. So Faye and a brooding Ramsus separately delve into the structure to stop him. Ramsus, understanding his manipulation and fearing the worst of his abuser, both confronts and kills Corellian and Myong. And unfortunately, that's all too late, as Corellian is assimilated into Deus behind them, rendering him beyond death, and the Ouroboros gene activates in Elly, making her the next host for Myong. And that couldn't be worse. So Faye understandably loses his fucking marbles, and System Id breaks, letting the demon back out to play. And obviously they carbon freeze him and stick him back in Shavat while Merkava rises. All while Deus has begun to assimilate with the Wells. Shit's looking bad. But meanwhile, in this cryosleep, Faye recalls another memory as Lacan, where a schism occurred between both himself and Corellian when Sophia was injured in the war. From here, Corellian promises to defend her with his life, and that would send him into straight-up psychosis when he finds out that under his watch, Sophia is punching the Excalibur, a part of the Eldritch, through Merkava to save her people. And in her final moments, she tells both men that through humanity supporting itself, a true happiness can bloom. The world needs community, and she is more than willing to die as an emblem to peace. And finally, she tells Lacan one thing: live. And as she sacrifices herself, the war ends. Corellian, infuriated with humanity, swears vengeance for her life. And Lacan, a spiritually incomplete contact, splits in twain. One half passing to the next incarnation, and another half haunting the world as Grahf. And that's another thing that's been in front of us the entire time too. Because earlier in Aveh, Myong told Grahf that Faye resembles him greatly. Spooky stuff. And now, back in present day, occurs perhaps the most serendipitous scene, because the first person to visit Faye this time is Dan. And hoping to rub it in his face, it looks like finally Faye has gotten his just desserts. How's that for Oh, fuck. Oh, God, he's transforming. He's transforming. Fuck. We gotta get the fuck out of here. So it destroyed Shavat. Should we blame Dan for that? The rest of the crew catch wind that Id is also trying to contact the same divine presence as Corellian. So they trek to the land of Bethlehem to find arguably the most important object in the entire Xenoseries franchise:
The Zohar.
For now, just understand this as an object that was present for the birth of the fucking universe. Think of it as a wish fulfillment device. It powers Deus, every gear in existence. It's a font for the ether of the world. It's a godlike device capable of really infinite energy. And Id is already using it. Fuck. Luckily for the group, they're not alone in saving Faye, as the wise man makes another grand appearance and finally unveils his true self. He is Khan Wong, Faye's father. And all while the party tries to reason with Id, inside of Faye's mind, he learns that yes, he was a persona created by Id to hide himself from the world. And Id, feeling pretty confident in his usurping of Faye's mind, mocks the futility of his situation. That is, until the coward musters the courage to show what he's been hiding away this entire time. At just 4 years old, in 9985, Miyahawa's previous host had passed due to an old age, and Karen Wong, a hapless Shavat citizen, would become her next victim. And upon discovering Faye as the contact, she began a litany of spiritual fusion experiments upon him, unbeknownst to Khan. And this would be when Mia as Karen would make contact with Grahf, who after 500 years had come to return his soul to the perfect reincarnation of his physical body. And when Faye, in a panic, lays eyes upon his mother's unchanging face, his powers erupt, loosening Mia's grip on Kahran. And in that moment of lucidity, she shields Faye from the blast, killing her, and inadvertently creating Id. And in the end, Id now is illuminated upon the truth. And he offers fealty to Faye, pleading to fully integrate into his subconscious. And with Faye's persona combining into one whole person, every memory of every incarnation comes flooding in all at once. And with the knowledge and wisdom of every single life, he is now fully Faye Fong Wong, the reincarnation of Abel.
Behold, the wave existence.
A higher dimensional entity, hailing from, an existence of waves, huh? This being appears in the virtual form of Faye's perception. And when he asks what anybody probably would, like, are you God? It answers, in many ways, yes, and in many ways, no. This is truly a matter of paradigm. And the wave existence starts to tell Faye how he even got here to begin with, and it's really fucking complicated. It's insanely complicated. I'm going to explain that in the most bare, simple terms possible. Perhaps to the point of reductiveness, please excuse me. The wave existence was imprisoned in the Zohar by humanity. Abel, the only known survivor of the Eldritch, just so happened to lay eyes upon it. And with it being this wish fulfillment device, it heard his plea to, quote, return to his mother. So it used Kodonomy, a hyper-advanced 3D printer, basically, to make the original version of Ellyhayym. And Ellyhayym eventually split off into Myong, and Ellyhayym stayed as this, quote, anti-type, a mother to humanity. And Myong was made to rebuild Deus. That's as simple as I can put it. And as silly as this is going to sound, the wave existence looked at a 6-year-old Abel and said, I'm going to reincarnate you 1,000 times over until you get me out of here. And now that you know all of this, that flashback in Black Moon Forest probably makes a little bit more sense, with the Gazelle Ministry walking the desert and Abel meeting the OG Elly for the first time. Which, how does it feel knowing your girlfriend was created from the 9,000-year-old wish of you wanting a mommy? Actually, let's not even touch that. And so, Faye is not only a whole human being, but many combined. And the wave existence gifts him with an evolution. From Veltal to Xenogears. Yes, the Xenogears. The fucking name on the cover, baby. Okay, so Grahf has been using Khan's body kind of like Myong would, and I'm just gonna pray that fucking makes sense. And while he's trying to kill Faye, the crew are beating the shit out of him. And then Grahf has a change of heart and decides, yeah, I'm gonna sacrifice myself as a decoy to keep a now extremely hungry Zohar at bay. And Grahf tells Faye that the same revelation has dawned on Elly, and to save her would be to save every woman bound with her. And it's up to Faye to free humanity from those binds. Bethlehem is quiet, and the wise men and Grahf are no more. Okay, sad shit aside, everybody hops into Excalibur Mark II to go blow up Merkava. And that plan actually does work, and it looks cool as fuck. But little does everybody know that was merely a vessel for Deus. And as it plummets to the earth, Deus assumes its true form, and it levels half the fucking planet. Whoops! And look, once the crew actually go inside of the fruiting body, that plot is pretty much on rails to the end. So I think this is as good a time as any to tidy up the reincarnation timeline with a side mission that I truly believe should not be optional. This should be mandatory. If the player wishes to use Emeralda to her fullest capability, one must visit the lighthouse to see another side of the ancient city of Zeboim. And upon arriving, you'd slowly have a revelation. This looks pretty similar to metropolitan cities of today. And while you're exploring the derelict Tokyo, basically, you can find these slides I've been showing throughout the video, which show just how Myong did away with the Zeboimians, illuminating that the people were being manipulated into a, nuclear war. When Faye arrives at the plaza in the center of town, he's able to recall a flashback of New Year's Day as Kim, a nanotechnologist specializing in molecular machines, who, alongside a previous incarnation of Elly, wished to in many ways repair and surpass Zeboim's genetic damage, as anyone born from the civilization had a lifespan of about 30 years, give or take. And Elly would suffer the same fate as many Zeboimians, unable to conceive a child, which undoubtedly had an effect on Kim, who creates Emeralda as a, quote, form of pure life, with the twins of Mia as his sponsor. And again, she would have changed the world if Mia hadn't twisted the knife, advancing her military forces on his laboratory. And as this happens at the very last moment, Elly sacrifices herself so that the two can escape. And as she takes both her and the soldier's life, Kim pounds on the glass, damning everything before him. And honestly, we never fully know his fate. And as that vision fades, and that memory being discovered, Emeralda grows into her true form. Which is to say, like, she kind of just eats a Mario mushroom, gets a little bit taller, a little bit older, but, fuck it. Like, she's more powerful, so we'll take it. Also, like a little editor's note at the end of this, I had no clue that if you go back to Aveh and go to Lahan, that music box that breaks in the beginning of the game, that was Kim's gift to Emeralda. That's the coolest shit in the world. There's probably a million other secrets I don't know. That's why the song is called Faraway Promise. He's saying like 1,000 years from now, you'll be safe, I promise. What the fuck? Great game. But hold on, we are not done in Zeboim. Because who else do we find here? Big fucking Joe. With his little shop, let's call it, where he illuminates that this is where he once called his home. Revered as a hero to Zeboim, he wished to outlive a very short lifespan. So, at the unfathomably old age of 29, he underwent a procedure to freeze himself. But unfortunately to the doctors in charge of his preservation, they froze him too quickly, and he died in cryostasis. Obviously, that would prove to be false, because when Ethos came around to excavating Zeboim, they mistook his pod for trash and threw him out to sea, where he'd wash up in Aquavie and be found by the Davy Boys and released. And as one would do, waking up 4,000 years later, he swam to Ignis, Xenogears' central continent, in hoping to reclaim his glory in, quote, the last years of his life. So at 4,036, I guess that makes him the oldest living being on the planet now that Kane's gone. Damn. Also, side note, Choo-Choo's people are from Zeboim too. They're from similar experiments at the time. Zeboim was low-key the most interesting place in this game. Fuck you, Square. I wanted to know more. I wanted more. All right, let's get into Merkava and tie a pretty bow on the story. Okay, technically by this point, the party has fought and defeated what they believed to be Deus's true form, but finally, at the core of Merkava, they see it for what it actually is. A 4-pillared tree of pure energy. And the party racks their brains on how to defeat this, and Satan comments it's probably best to defeat the 4 archangels first. But you absolutely don't have to do that. You can just go fight Deus proper if you really wished. When Faye finally punches through to Deus, we see it for its true existence. This giant mantis transformer thingy. It's like a Malak angel. It's spooky. And upon its very spectacular defeat, the Zohar modifier is also destroyed. And the wave existence is finally freed. And now that the Zohar is gone, all ether in the world dissipates into the atmosphere. That means no more gears or ether, permanently. Save, of course, for Xenogears, now imbued with the essence of the wave existence. So, the good news is that they've saved the planet from Deus. That's great. But the bad news is that in order to leave this plane, the wave existence needs to put out so much energy, it's going to obliterate the planet. So now Elly, integrated with the Demiurge, pushes the entire business up into space to save everybody from the blast. And in space, they learn that the wave existence fleeing of this dimension has opened up this rift of sorts, known as the Path of Sephiroth. And Faye and Elly are deep in the event horizon, and they get sucked into this hyper-dimensional tube. And when Faye finds himself in between cascading shards of reality, he challenges Corellian, who pits him against Mia's true form. The Ouroboros gene itself. Like a literal manifestation of it. He's gonna beat its snake ass to save Elly, and if that ain't love, I don't know what is. And when he defeats the gene, Faye is finally able to rid the world of Myong and save his lover. And this action shatters the binds of the Demiurge, and no matter what happens now, humanity is safe from extinction. Corellian, watching the world be free by the two giga-chads of humanity, has a change of heart. Elly understands the love that Corellian had for Sophia, and how he wished to rid humanity of the trials of love and loss by reverting life to that of the wave existence, a pure energy. But now, free of godlike influences, humanity is its own master, in control of its collective destiny. Seeing the look in Corellian's eyes, they offer their hand to return to the living world. But Corellian has decided. He's done enough to scar the planet. If he's really to do something worthwhile for existence, he'll need to make proper contact with the divine. So, in one graceful plunge, he sprouts his wings and ascends into that abyssal expanse, never to be seen again. And as the crew rush their way to the cliffside, stars begin to sing as they all watch the wreckage fall in knives from heaven. And screams of delight leap from their chest when they see something truly incredible. Faye and Elly together in the cockpit of Xenogears. And they share an embrace as they lock eyes with their family. And somewhere else, a gentle breeze flows through the mountains, and a single feather flies through the canyon. And that is episode 5 of Xenogears. Episode 5? Wait, hold on. Yeah. Xenogears, the game, was intended to belong to a 5-part series, divided by the eras of the timeline, with each one being told in a different medium. Though this would never come to fruition, due to Takahashi and Saga leaving Square. Thankfully, the dream would be reborn in Xenosaga at its newest home in Monolith Soft, Takahashi's newest endeavor, where tons of motifs and themes would be carried into both Xenoseries 2 decades later. And it seems like with one masterpiece under their belt, they learned a few lessons the hard way. But they were lessons learned. In an interview with Silicon Era, Saga was asked about the balance between dramatic story and gameplay, and what was her takeaway from those years of practice.
Keeping balance between those elements is the most important task we must work at. As you know, the heavy volume of story has been a core factor of the Xenoworks, but now we realize that too heavily orienting towards visuals and stories would ruin the fundamental reason for the existence of the games.
See, Saga knew more people needed to enjoy the gameplay more than anything. Not just have their games appeal to nerds who make video essays on 30-year-old games. And look, if you're anything like me, hesitant to move on from what you felt was such an amazing foundation, Xenogears' Perfect Works is exactly what you're looking for. A downright Bible, hosting a wealth of information about the backstory and history of the universe of Xenogears. Alongside a menagerie of concept art, you'll find answers to questions you hadn't even thought to ask. Dying to get more out there, this was the couple's way of filling it with auxiliary info that just couldn't make it into the game. Think of it like a good version of J.K. Rowling's editorializing, without the rampant transphobia and black mold. Seriously though, this thing is massive. I've not even finished leafing through it. It's huge. This also isn't the only piece of supplementary material. Xenogears was also blessed with an anthology manga and the 4-Koma book, of which I've shown like a bunch of images from both in this video plenty of times. I really enjoy the 4-Koma book for its dated but really dumb sense of humor. Without it, we'd have no clue that Elly was a Fujoshi, or that Balthazar evolved into Tora Melchior. That's super important info. My favorite reoccurring bit in the manga is like how horny Choo-Choo is for Faye. It drives what was a pretty innocent gag in the game into outright fucking debauchery. She wants that cookie bad. Speaking on relationships, this game has serious developments that both shocked and interested me. One thing that surprised me was Billy and Bart's relationship. Billy is a very straight-laced character. In most instances, he's actually pretty demure and stable, and it's only with Bart that we actually see who he really is. Because not dissimilar to Josiah, Bart is prone to unearned pride and wanton violence. And my favorite aspect of those two are their allergy to authority, which no doubt evokes a rage in Billy. So throughout their strained alliance, they do what any teenage dudes would do when they're forced to work together. Bully the fuck out of each other. But well after Bart and Billy's arcs have been resolved, Billy confesses the length of which he nearly went to support Primera, his sister. And yeah, we remember that included selling his body, and that's where Bart actually shines, because he immediately detests the idea, proclaiming, "There are things you can get back once sold, and there are things you just can't." And when Billy retorts that the Deacons of Ethos would have given him 3,000 gold for one night, Bart loses it. He's not having it. And to me, that's one of the many brilliant moments of Bart, because he gets to stand on business and have another roundabout way to care for Billy, as he does with most everybody. Another very lived-in moment is when the Eldridge rises, because before Faye and Elly make love for the first time, they actually get into a huge spat, which I cut for brevity. Elly wants in on the mission, and Faye denies her. He's become way too protective, much to her chagrin. It's still kind of understandable, but when she storms off, everyone suggests that Faye go apologize. To which, you're tasked to return to her bunk. And if you accidentally stumble into Bart's door, which is adjacent to hers, he'll yell out, "Hey, stupid, it's the other room." And Bart's just like full of missable exchanges like that. He's the GOAT, really. But much more seriously, the other two relationships that I don't speak on much are that of Rico and Hammer, and Jesse and Sigurd. Rico and Hammer's relationship feels reminiscent of a brotherly dynamic. Hammer is the excitable and naive younger sibling, with Rico constantly pounding down his enthusiasm. No doubt that they're both written very closely to one another because they're both demi-humans and subliminally play both sides of that coin. Rico's been hardened by the years of, explicit racial discrimination, while Hammer lives under that thumb in almost silence. He practically ignores the alienation and instead plays into an eccentric nature. If he can't belong, he may as well own it. And a lot of this is implicit, including their growing closer. And it's one gripe that I feel like I have with Hammer's fight. Even though, yes, he totally idolized Faye, Rico was his brother in many ways. I feel like we could have gotten a better goodbye and still kept the gut punch. And Jesse and Sigurd is a whole nother beast of implied hostility. Think of it this way. Billy grew up to be like Sigurd due to Jesse's abrasiveness and prolonged absence, right? And with Jesse gone protecting Shavat, he came home to a miniature version of one of his closest friends. And yes, he knows that this is actually the best outcome, but it always feels like he's burying these volatile emotions when they're both in the room. For instance, Sigurd bears marks from his years as a test subject. There's these 4 piercings on his body that he leaves open. And those procedures are likely the reason for his lack of tolerance for alcohol. And Jesse pokes fun a few times about how much of a lightweight he is, and there's no way he doesn't know what he's been through. God, dude, what a rich tapestry. I could go on forever. What I've had to stop myself from talking about so much was how Xenogears really dug its claws into me the moment it became a political drama. Ever since the Gebler were introduced, I needed to know more about Solaris, like ASAP. Obviously, it's a stratified authoritarian force. That's clear from the moment it's introduced, but to even its denizens, it's a dystopia so shackled by institutionalized classism that if not for the evil micromanagement, would have barely even functioned. A very interesting, if not loose, example of this classism to me is the Solarian language barrier. You could argue that anthropologically, a society that's been secluded from the world for at least 500 years would, yes, develop its own culture and linguistics. True. But the Solarians are so aware of the Lambs and their culture as a lower people. Even the citizens are in on the surveillance and gawk at their barbarity. So it says everything to me about Elly's nature when she first meets Faye, because she orders him around in Solarian before switching modes. Sure, it shows that she's green, but also subconsciously she sees him as an equal before they even meet eyes. And you could write that off as reincarnation business, but I think it could be as simple as Elly's empathy kicking in as it does 1,000 times over in this plot. Elly is far from the only person that Solaris messes with. The class disparity is so severe within the city that everyone who passes through each miserable rank, they undergo this radicalization of some kind. The original elements are a perfect example of these kidnapped men, whose every moment in Solaris was spent planning for a way out. Half of Xenogears tells us what this did to those men, and the effect that their absence had on the family they love. Jesse assumes a fallen friend's identity just to hide. Sigurd withstood rigorous experimentation, and Satan lived as a third-class slave for so much of his life. And yet still, it was their time outside that acted as a North Star to steel their resolve. They refused to let Solaris eat them alive, which cannot be said for people like Dominia or Ramsus. Ramsus was literally a brain in a jar that had to eat a kid and steal his identity. That's in Perfect Works, that's canon, by the way. And yet still, he saw Solaris, and more importantly, Corellian, as his only salvation. And I feel like the recruiting of Dominia and the Elements proper was his one good act, because he founded the New Elements as a military group independent of class. So long as someone showed promise, Ramsus would take them under his wing. And a young Dominia, a refugee from a now-destroyed Elru, was a star pupil. And she drank the Kool-Aid hardcore. Solaris gave her a home, a tutor, and a purpose. And for it, she sank like a stone in water. She's genuinely a tragic character, so is Ramsus. I really like them both. I also love the theory that Elly's mother was in fact a land dweller. I mean, there's a very obvious chance she doesn't look like her parents because she's a 1-to-1 replica of Kodaname's anti-type. But like, think about it, Sophia didn't fit the perfect description either, so, And it would inform Eric's decision to spare Faye's life even more, because he's been in Elly's shoes. He's fallen in love with a lamb. So many people have. This has happened so often in history. But I think the most compelling denizen of them all is Corellian, the Solarian. Because by the end of the game, we can glean a bit more about the true nature of existence. We've seen the planet's genesis and the religious myths built upon that mystery, but we're kind of left in the dark for a bit on how existence began. The wave existence illuminates that dimensions cascade upon each other, so in many ways, the third dimension we're in is a result of its home. And those indelible waves are the weave of existence and the origin for souls. Corellian's scared that now as a being intertwined with sin, his presence is impure and he won't be allowed back in. But regardless, after 500 years, he has a chance to act upon the wishes, to return to the primordial waves and speak with his God. And if he's to do that, he cannot abide by the gospel of the one-winged humans. Therefore, he must depend upon his own will to find it. Hence, both wings. I can't take full credit. Thank you to a countless amount of Reddit users who helped divine that take because, I really resonate with it. I like it a lot. We're 2 hours into this video. Can I just be honest with you guys? I kind of don't want to finish this video. Wrapping production, hitting export. It means in many ways I'm done playing, thinking, writing, talking all about Xenogears. You know, it's my job. This is my job. I talk about video games on the internet, and I've got to keep going, and it means I've got to move on. But I've genuinely become so endeared to this game, and for the 6 months that I've slaved away at making this video, I got to admit, I'm really gonna miss this one. More than most, I am really gonna miss it. Quietly. So quietly, this video game has changed me. And I'm very thankful for that. I admit it. I admit it. You are my white whale, Xenogears. And gladly, so gladly, I will wade through thousands of games on the unfathomably small chance that one day I will pull you from the dredge and we will meet eyes one last time. And as always, if you were working on something while watching the video, I hope your project goes well. And thank you for watching, and thank you, Xenogears. There's never going to be something like you again.